The alien scanned his DNA. Apex predator. He replied, "No, just Imperial Guard. If you're not a heretic, then declare your city of origin. Leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the Emperor's glory." At the conclusion, rate this tale from 0 to 10. The Emperor protects. The bioscanner beeped frantically as Kethvar stared at the readout, his feline ears flicking back in confusion. The device had to be malfunctioning. According to the data streaming across his screen, the unconscious bipedal creature they'd pulled from the wreckage wasn't just dangerous, it was an evolutionary impossibility. "Commander," Kethvar called to the bridge, his tail lashing nervously, "the scans of the survivor are anomalous." Captain Irixtal padded over on silent paws, her golden fur bristling with concern. The Falari had encountered dozens of species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared them for this. The creature lay motionless on their medical bay table, pale, pink skin, sparse hair, and oddly proportioned limbs that seemed almost fragile compared to their own sleek forms. "Define anomalous," Irixtal growled, examining the readings. "Bone density exceeds military-grade Corvan warriors. Muscle fiber composition suggests strength ratings impossible for its size. Brain activity patterns indicate constant threat assessment, even while unconscious. But most disturbing," Kethvar paused, his claws nervously clicking against the console. "The genetic markers classify it as an apex predator. That's impossible. Look at it. No natural weapons, no armor plating, barely any fur for protection." As if summoned by their conversation, the creature's eyes snapped open. Not the gradual awakening they expected, but instant predatory awareness. Those strange forward-facing eyes, hunter's eyes, immediately scanned the room, cataloging threats and escape routes in seconds. "Where am I?" The voice was surprisingly calm for something that had just regained consciousness on an alien vessel. Irixtal approached cautiously, her translator struggling with the creature's language. "You're aboard the Falari vessel Swift Claw. We found you in an escape pod after your ship was destroyed by reptilian raiders. You've been unconscious for 3 cycles. The creature, human according to their linguistic databases, sat up with fluid grace that belied its earlier apparent fragility. 3 days. The 7th Cadian needs immediate support. Where exactly are we?" "The 7th... What?" Kethvar interjected. "You were alone in that pod. There were no other survivors from your vessel." Something dangerous flashed across the human's features. "The guard doesn't abandon their positions. If the transport was hit, the regiment is still fighting." He stood, and despite being shorter than either Falari, his presence somehow filled the room. "I need to return immediately." "That's impossible," Irixtal explained. Patiently. "The reptilian fleet controls that entire sector now. 16 worlds have fallen in the past week. Even our combined forces with the TOW couldn't hold them back." The human's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "You said reptilians?" "Yes, the scaled dominion has been Xenos." The word carried such cold hatred that both Falari took an unconscious step backward. "I need weapons. Now." Kethavar's medical scanner continued beeping insistently. The human's biometrics were spiking in ways that should have been lethal. Heart rate, adrenaline, neural activity, but he showed no signs of distress. If anything, he seemed more focused. "You don't understand," Irixtal tried reasoning. "These aren't primitive raiders. The reptilian dominion has technology centuries ahead of most species. Their ships phase through shields, their weapons adapt to any defense. They've conquered 47 systems in 6 months. The human began examining their medical equipment with disturbing familiarity. Standard LAS-Pack compatibility, these power cells might work. He looked up at the increasingly nervous Falari. "I need to contact my regiment. Standard Imperial Guard emergency frequency should be..." "Imperial what?" Kethvar interrupted. For the first time, the human seemed to truly notice his surroundings. His eyes narrowed as he took in their feline features, their advanced technology, the alien script on their displays. "You're not human." "Obviously not," Irixtal replied, confused by the statement's tone, as if being non-human was somehow noteworthy. "I'm Captain Irixtal of the Falari Defense Fleet. This is our chief medic, Kethvar. We're part of the Galactic Alliance opposing reptilian expansion." "Galactic Alliance?" The human's laugh held no humor. "Working with Xenos? That's..." He paused, studying their faces. How long was I unconscious? What year is this? The questions made no sense, but something about the human's demeanor kept both Filari on edge. Despite being unarmed and outnumbered on their own ship, he radiated an aura of barely contained violence. You suffered significant trauma, Kethvar offered diplomatically. Perhaps some memory loss. My memory is fine, Xenos. The human's tone remained conversational, but the threat was unmistakable. I'm Guardsman Thane Korvek, 7th Cadian Shock Troops, service number 7749 Gamma. I was conducting reconnaissance when our transport was hit by what you're calling reptilian raiders. Guardsman? Irixtal tested the unfamiliar title. Are you some kind of soldier? The finest soldiers in the galaxy, Korvek replied with matter-of-fact pride. Now about those weapons. Before either Filari could respond, their ship's proximity alarms screamed to life. The distinctive harmonic of reptilian phase drives resonated through the hull as enemy vessels materialized around them. 3 cruisers, Irixtal snarled, checking their tactical display. We can't fight that many. Kethvar, prepare for emergency jump. Drive systems need 4 minutes to charge, the medic reported, his paws flying over the controls. Through the medical bay's viewport, the sleek-scaled forms of reptilian warships became visible, predatory things that seemed to slide through space rather than fly. Their weapon ports were already glowing with accumulated energy. 4 minutes? Korvek moved to the viewport, studying the enemy formation with professional interest. Adequate. Do you have any explosive devices aboard? This is a medical vessel, Irixtal protested. We're not equipped for combat. Everything's equipped for combat if you're creative enough. Korvek turned from the window, and both Filari were shocked to see him smiling, not the expression of someone facing certain death, but something far more unsettling. Anticipation. Those ships have standard void shield configurations. Predictable. Where's your engine room? You can't be serious, Kethvar stammered. Those are warships. Each one could destroy a dozen vessels our size. Then we'd better make sure they don't get the chance. Korvek was already moving toward the corridor, moving with sudden purpose that made the Filari scramble to keep up. Tell me about their boarding tactics. Boarding? Irixtal's voice cracked. We don't fight them directly. No one fights reptilians. In close combat and survives. Korvek paused at the corridor junction, turning back with that same disturbing smile. No one? The ship shuddered as the first reptilian energy beams struck their shields. Warning lights bathed everything in red as their defensive systems strained against the assault. Shields down to 60%, Kethvar reported unnecessarily. They could all feel the hull plates buckling under the barrage. Good, Korvek said, continuing toward the engine room. Let them think we're helpless. We are helpless, Irixtal protested, but she found herself following the strange human anyway. Something about his absolute confidence was infectious, even as her rational mind screamed that they were all about to die. The ship's intercom crackled to life with guttural reptilian voices, demanding their surrender. The translation software struggled with their dialect, but the meaning was clear. Submit, or be destroyed. Korvek paused at the engine room. Entrance, listening to the alien voices with the same focused attention he'd given their tactical situation. They want prisoners. That means they'll board us, instead of simply destroying the ship. How is that good news? Kethvar demanded. Because, Korvek replied, examining the engineering displays with growing satisfaction, it means they have to get close. The Tau commander's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the tactical display. 3 days had passed since the human forces arrived, and their methods continued to baffle every principle of warfare he understood. The Catherian coalition, a desperate alliance of various Xenos species fleeing the devourer swarms, had been in full retreat when these Imperial Guard forces dropped from the sky. Commander Chasselmien, his Earthcast advisor, approached cautiously. The human leader requests another meeting. Colonel Victor Kozlov entered the command tent with that same unsettling confidence that marked all these humans. Behind him walked the towering figure they called a Space Marine, Brother Sergeant Thaddeus of the Ultramarines. The alien coalition representatives had learned to avoid looking directly at the Astartes. Something about those red eyes behind the skull-faced helmet triggered primal fear responses across every species present. Colonel, Mien began carefully, your forces continue to take significant casualties in these frontal assaults. The greater good would be better served through the greater good, Kozlov interrupted, his scarred face splitting into what humans called a smile. Tau, we've been serving the greatest good for 10,000 years. It's called the Emperor of Mankind. The Felinian representative, Captain Silas Nightstrike, flicked his ears in agitation. His people were renowned hunters, but watching humans fight was like observing something from their planet's most savage prehistory. Colonel, your soldiers charged a bio-titan yesterday, with bayonets, while screaming hymns. And killed it, Brother Sergeant Thaddeus rumbled through his vox grill. The Emperor protects. That's not normal, squeaked Dr. Chirp, the avian scientist whose species prided itself on logical analysis. My calculations show a 0.003% probability of success for that maneuver. Colonel Kozlov pulled out a worn data slate and consulted it with mock seriousness. Says here our regimental motto is death or glory. Seems we chose glory. The Ursine clan leader, Grom Ironpaw, leaned forward on his massive haunches. His people understood strength, but human endurance defied comprehension. You're wounded, the one with half his torso missing. He's still fighting. Corporal Jenkins, good man. Already applied for a commendation. Nothing stops a true servant of the Emperor. Commander Mien's philosophical training kicked in. But surely you understand the tactical inefficiency of Tau, Brother Sergeant. Thaddeus interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. Efficiency is heresy, faith is victory. The meeting was interrupted by Vox Static. Colonel, this is Lieutenant Morrison. We've got contact with a new Tyrannid bioform. Looks like they've adapted specifically to counter our last assault. Every alien in the tent stiffened. Adaptive evolution was the Tyrannid hive mind's most terrifying weapon, the ability to counter any tactic within hours. Understood, Lieutenant. What's your assessment? Well, sir, they've grown thicker armor plating against our last fire, longer reach to counter our bayonet charges, and acid sacs to melt through our cover. The aliens exchanged glances. This was exactly what they feared, an enemy that learned from every encounter. Outstanding, Kozlov replied cheerfully. Sounds like they're expecting us to be reasonable. Time to disappoint them. Ready the flamers and prepare for Operation Righteous Fury. Operation what? Dr. Chirp's feathers ruffled in confusion. Simple, bird. When the enemy adapts to your tactics, you use tactics so insane they can't adapt fast enough. Kozlov turned to his Vox. Morrison, tell the men we're going full Cadian tonight. Death or glory. The response came back immediately. Sir, yes, sir, the Emperor protects. Captain Nightstrike's whiskers twitched. Cadian? What's a Cadian? Cadia was a fortress world, Brother Sergeant Thaddeus explained, with something approaching. Pride. It fell to the forces of chaos after holding for 10,000 years. The planet literally broke before the Guard did. The planet broke first? Mien's voice carried a note of disbelief. Aye, Kozlov nodded. Good example for the lads. Cadia stands, in our hearts and in our tactics. Grom Ironpaw rumbled deep in his chest, the Ursine equivalent of nervous laughter. You're all insane. Thank you, the human and space marine replied in unison. The War Council was Guy. Interrupted again as a figure stumbled into the tent. It was Trooper Davis, the human Mien had seen take a bioweapon impact to the chest. According to all medical logic, he should have been dead. Instead, he snapped to attention with his left arm hanging uselessly and his chest wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. Colonel, the Xeno's allies wanted to see our impossible survival rates. Thought I'd demonstrate. Dr. Chirp nearly fell from her perch. You should be in a medical coma. Your vital signs indicate, ma'am, with respect, my vital signs indicate I'm still fighting for the Emperor. Nothing else matters. The avian's analytical mind raced. But the pain, the trauma, how do you function with those injuries? Same way we always have, bird. Pure, bloody-minded stubbornness. Davis grinned through obvious agony. Plus, the Emperor protects. Captain Nightstrike approached the wounded human cautiously. His feline senses could detect the pheromones of pain and stress, but also something else. Determination so absolute it bordered on madness. Human, why do you continue? Because someone has to. Because the Emperor demands it. Because these bug bastards think they can eat our new allies. Davis swayed slightly but remained standing. Because we're Imperial Guard and that means something. The Tau commander studied his tactical displays again. The human reinforcement schedule showed units with casualty rates that should have meant complete combat ineffectiveness, yet they continued to report ready for operations. Colonel, your regimental records, they can't be accurate. According to this, some squads have 150% casualties. Reinforcements, Tau. New lads replace the fallen, take up their numbers and their duties. The regiment never dies. But the psychological trauma of constant replacement is an honor, Brother Sergeant Thaddeus interjected. To serve where heroes fell. To carry their memory forward, Dr. Chirp consulted her analytical instruments frantically. This defies all psychological models. No species maintains combat effectiveness under these conditions. Bird, Trooper Davis said gently, you're thinking like prey. We're not prey. The comment hung in the air like a revelation. Mien realized suddenly that every species in their coalition, for all their technological advancement, tactical brilliance, and individual courage, thought like prey when facing extinction. They calculated survival odds, planned strategic retreats, preserved their populations for future fighting. Humans calculated how much damage they could do before dying. Your world, Captain Nightstrike said slowly. What was it like? Colonel Kozlov and Brother Sergeant Thaddeus exchanged glances. The first moment of hesitation the aliens had seen from either human. Our world, Kozlov began carefully, was called Mordia. Industrial hive world. Toxic atmosphere. Acid rain. Volcanic activity. Average. Life expectancy without military service was 37 years. And with military service? Grom asked. About the same, Davis chimed in cheerfully, but with more glory. You volunteered for military service that didn't improve your survival odds. Dr. Chirp's voice rose to a near screech. Improved our chances of dying for something that mattered, the colonel corrected. For the Emperor, for the Imperium, for humanity itself. Brother Sergeant Thaddeus stepped forward. I was not born on Mordia. I come from Macraga, one of the more civilized worlds of the Imperium, but I have fought alongside Mordians for 3 centuries. They are among the finest soldiers I have ever known. 3 centuries? Mien's mandibles clicked rapidly. How old are you? By your reckoning? Approximately 400 years. I have been fighting the enemies of humanity for longer than most of your civilizations have existed. The weight of that statement settled over the assembled aliens like a physical force. This warrior had been waging war since before their species had achieved spaceflight. The humans weren't newcomers to conflict. They were war itself, shaped by millennia of constant battle. The Tyranids, Dr. Chirp said quietly. They've consumed thousands of worlds, entire sectors. How do you face that without despair? Easy, Trooper Davis replied. We've seen worse. Worse? Every alien voice spoke in unison. Brother Sergeant Thaddeus nodded, grimly. The Horus Heresy. Half the Imperium turned to chaos 10,000 years ago. We faced our own brothers in battle, our own genetic father figures corrupted by dark gods. Terra itself was under siege. And, Grom pressed, we won, Colonel Kozlov said simply. Took 10,000 years to rebuild, but we won. These bugs are just Tuesday's work. The Vox crackled again. Colonel, enemy contact in Sector 7. Looks like they're testing our new defensive positions. Acknowledged. All units prepare for defense in depth. Show these aliens how Mordians hold ground. As the command team moved to their positions, Captain Nightstrike found himself walking beside Brother Sergeant Thaddeus. Space Marine, your kind. How many of you exist? Across the galaxy? Perhaps 1 million, against trillions of enemies. Those odds are irrelevant. We are the Emperor's angels of death. Numbers have never mattered. The Felinian warrior paused. His species had always believed that courage was facing death despite fear. These humans seemed to face death as an old friend. Do you ever feel fear? The Space Marine considered the question seriously. I know fear, Felinian, but I also know duty, faith, brotherhood. When the alternatives are slavery, consumption, or corruption, fear becomes small. Outside, the first explosions echoed across the defensive lines. The Tyranid probe assault had begun, and with it, the aliens would witness once again why. Humanity had survived 40,000 years of galactic warfare. The war for survival was about to become a lesson in human nature. The xenomedic scanner beeped frantically as it ran across Sergeant Kane's torn uniform. Purple blood, his own, dripped from 3 deep gashes across his chest. where reptilian claws had found their mark. Impossible, the avian creature whispered, its feathers ruffling in distress. Your DNA shows you are apex predator classification, but your injury. It gestured with wing-like appendages at the savage wounds. How are you still conscious? Kane spat a glob of blood and grinned, revealing teeth stained crimson. Apex predator, nah mate, just Imperial guard. He hefted his lasgun with one good arm. The Emperor protects. Captain Veltar of the Kytherian Defense Force watched this exchange with growing unease. For 3 standard days, these humans had been fighting alongside his people against the Serpentine hegemony's invasion force. 3 days of watching these seemingly primitive bipeds do things that defied every tactical manual, every biological study, every rational thought. Sergeant Kane, Veltar approached cautiously. His own lupine features were drawn with exhaustion, but the human looked ready to fight another battle despite wounds that should have killed him hours ago. Perhaps you should rest. Let our healers— Can't rest yet, Captain. Kane's eyes never left the horizon where smoke pillars marked the burning city of Kytheros Prime. Still got Xenos to purge. He paused, then glanced at the wolf-like alien. The bad kind of Xenos. You lot are all right. The casual way this Deathworld savage categorized entire species as good or bad Xenos made Veltar's pack instincts tingle with warning. Yet somehow being classified as all right by these terrifying humans felt like the highest honor his people had ever received. A thunderous roar echoed across the battlefield. Through the smoke, massive shapes emerged, serpentine battle mechs, each the size of a building, their plasma cannons already charging with deadly light. By the ancestral howl, Veltar breathed, Overlord-class walkers, 3 of them. Our remaining armor cannot— Hold my ration pack, Kane interrupted, shoving a nutrient cube into Veltar's clawed hands. The human was already moving, shouting into his voxcaster. All units, this is Sergeant Kane. I need volunteers for a suicide run. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Emperor willing, Sarge. For the homeworld. Death or glory. Veltar felt his ears flatten against his skull. These humans were volunteering for certain death. Not reluctantly, not with grim resignation, but with eager bloodthirst. Human Kane, the Kytherian captain called desperately. There must be another way. Our tactical computers show those mechs are impenetrable to small arms fire. You need heavy artillery, orbital bombardment. Nah, Kane replied cheerfully, fixing a bayonet to his lasgun. Just need a bit of the old Imperial spirit. Within minutes, 24 guardsmen had assembled. Their uniforms were tattered, their faces grime-streaked, their equipment battered beyond recognition. By every military standard Veltar knew, they should have been declared combat ineffective and evacuated. Instead, they stood at attention, ready to charge 3 walking fortresses with nothing but hand weapons and pure spite. Right then, lads, Kane addressed his men. Those big metal bastards think they can stomp around our new friend's planet without permission. I say we show them the error of their ways. His voice carried across the battlefield with parade ground clarity. Remember, we are the hammer of the Emperor. We are his wrath made manifest. And today, we give these serpentine scum a lesson in Imperial resolve. The responding war cry shook dust from nearby ruins. For the Emperor, Veltar watched in helpless fascination as the humans began their charge. No covering fire, no suppressing maneuvers, no tactical subtlety whatsoever. Just 30 humans sprinting across open ground toward 3 war machines that could level city blocks. The Overlord-class walkers turned their weapons on the charging infantry. Plasma beams carved molten furrows in the earth. Explosive shells turned stone to powder. The air itself seemed to burn with the intensity of their firepower. Humans fell, bodies were vaporized. The charge should have broken. Instead, the survivors kept running, screaming their devotion to their god emperor with voices that carried impossible conviction. "This is madness," whispered Veltar's communications officer, a nervous rodent-like being whose fur was standing on end. "They cannot possibly—" Kane reached the first mech. What happened next would be discussed in Kytherian military academies for generations. The human sergeant somehow scaled the massive walker's leg, using nothing but determination and magnetic boot clamps. As plasma fire scorched the air around him, he climbed with mechanical precision toward the machine's sensor cluster. "Impossible," breathed the avian medic. The heat signature alone should cook him alive. "The Emperor protects," came Kane's voice through the Voxcaster, calm as if he were commenting on weather. Other guardsmen had reached the remaining mechs. Veltar watched one trooper, a woman with sergeant's stripes, jam her chainsword directly into an exhaust port and trigger it to full revolutions. Superheated metal began fountaining from the wound like metallic blood. Another human had somehow reached a weapon mount and was systematically tearing apart the targeting systems with his bare hands, ignoring the electricity that should have killed him instantly. "Sir," Veltar's tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm reading massive structural failures across all 3 enemy units. The humans they're actually doing it." The first Overlord Walker shuddered to a halt. Kane's voice echoed from its command deck. "Knock knock, Xenos scum. Imperial Guard calling." The explosion that followed painted the sky orange, but it was the second Walker's destruction that truly broke Veltar's understanding of warfare. As the massive machine toppled, its pilot ejected in an escape pod. The pod should have been safe, should have carried the Serpentine commander to friendly lines. Instead, Guardsman Peters intercepted it, in mid-air, with a jump pack that had been malfunctioning for weeks and should never have achieved that altitude. "How?" Veltar demanded of no one in particular. "How is any of this possible?" The avian medic's scanner was beeping frantically again. "Captain, I'm detecting massive biochemical anomalies in the human forces. Adrenaline levels that should cause cardiac arrest. Cortisol spikes that should trigger system shutdown. Pain suppressant production that rivals military-grade combat stimulants." "They're drugged?" Veltar asked hopefully. That would at least explain the impossible behavior. "No, sir. These appear to be natural biological responses. Captain..." The medic's voice carried a note of species-deep fear. "What kind of world produces beings like this?" Before Veltar could answer, Kane's voice crackled through the Vox again. "All enemy armor. Neutralized. 30% casualties, not bad for a Tuesday. 30% casualties." The human spoke of losing nearly a third of his force as if discussing a minor inconvenience. "Sergeant Kane," Veltar called as the surviving humans regrouped. "Your tactics, your species, I must ask, where do you come from? What forged you into such warriors?" Kane paused in reloading his lasgun. "Terror, originally, though most of us are from Cadia, was from Cadia." A shadow passed over his face. "The planet broke before the Guard did. Your homeworld was destroyed." Veltar felt his pack bonds tighten in sympathy. "I'm sorry for your loss." Well. Kane shrugged with inhuman casualness. "Planets come and go. The Emperor endures." He gestured at his men, who were already preparing for the next engagement. Besides, gave us all something to be properly angry about. The casual way this human discussed the destruction of his entire world made Veltar's blood run cold. These beings weren't just warriors. They were something else entirely, something that treated galactic-scale catastrophe as motivation for Tuesday's work. A new sound reached them, the unmistakable hiss of serpentine drop pods breaching atmosphere, dozens of them, coming down like metallic rain across the city. "Enemy reinforcements," Veltar observed unnecessarily, "regimental strength at minimum." Kane grinned, and for the first time, Veltar truly understood why other species might consider humans terrifying. Outstanding. The lads were getting bored. As if summoned by some invisible signal, more Imperial forces began emerging from the ruins. Not just guardsmen, but other humans in different uniforms. Veltar's tactical display lit up with new contacts. "Sisters of Battle, reporting for purification duty," came a female voice across the Vox, crisp with authority. "Adeptus Mechanicus forces available for holy maintenance," added another, distorted. "By mechanical augmentation." Veltar stared at his scanner readings. "How many of you are there? On this continent?" Kane considered the question seriously. "Maybe 50,000, give or take. 50,000 humans, against a full Serpentine invasion force." The logical, tactical part of Veltar's mind performed rapid calculations. Enemy numbers, equipment advantages, defensive positions. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. The humans were vastly outnumbered and facing certain annihilation. But as he watched these Deathworld savages prepare for what should be their final battle, Veltar began to suspect that conventional military logic didn't apply to humans. Thunder rolled overhead as the first wave of enemy drop pods touched down, disgorging hundreds of serpentine shock troopers in full battle armor. Kane raised his laser gun and bellowed across the battlefield. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Emperor has blessed us with target-rich environment. Make every shot count." The human battle cry that followed seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. And somewhere in the smoke and chaos, Veltar heard something that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The humans were singing. The Hive Fleet Leviathan scout tendril recoiled as 17 Imperial Guard regiments opened fire simultaneously. Through the underground tunnels, Sister Aurelia could hear the thunderous roar of 1,000 laser guns and the distinctive whine of plasma. Cannons charging. The Kalith pack hunters pressed themselves against the cave walls, their feline ears flattened in terror. "How do they coordinate without a hive mind?" Elder Farsia Ivrain whispered, her psychic senses overwhelmed by the sheer determination radiating from the human defenders. "This defies all tactical doctrine." Commissar Holt reloaded his bolt pistol with mechanical precision. "The Emperor protects Xeno. We fight as one because we serve as one." He turned to address the mixed alien coalition that had gathered in the command bunker. "Today you witness what 10,000 years of constant warfare breeds." The Tau Firecast commander Shasel Kauyon studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. Their casualty rates should have broken morale hours ago. By all greater good principles, they should have routed. A Kalith warrior named Shadow Pounce, his spotted fur matted with gore, looked up from treating his wounds. "They've lost 60% of their forces, and they're singing." Indeed, from the forward trenches came the sound of human voices raised in Imperial hymns. The melody was grim, martial, and absolutely unbreakable. Even as bioplasma from Tyrannid warriors melted through armor, the guardsmen sang louder. "In the Emperor's name we stand. In the Emperor's name we die." Sister Aurelia smiled beneath her helm. "Would you prefer we cry instead? Death is just another form of service." She hefted her flamer, its promethium tanks full and ready. "And we excel at service." The Jokero tech savant Bananas had been working frantically on something in the corner, his orange fingers dancing over circuits that no other species could comprehend. Now he chattered excitedly, presenting a modified Voxcaster to Commissar Holt. "What did the monkey make?" growled a Kroot mercenary, his beak clicking nervously. Holt examined the device. "Long-range communications array, multi-species compatible." His scarred face broke into what might have been a grin. "Outstanding work, citizen. The Emperor smiles upon innovation in his service." The Kalith Elder Whisperwind approached hesitantly. "Commissar, our satellites detect 17 more hive ships entering the system. We estimate 43 billion organisms heading planetward. Logic dictates immediate evacuation." "Logic!" Holt spat into the dirt. "Throne, damned logic." He activated the Voxcaster, and his voice boomed across the planet's surface. "All Imperial forces, all allied contingents, all beings who value existence over extinction. This is Commissar Holt of the 47th Cadian Shock Troops. Today we make our stand." Across the planet's surface, alien ears and communication devices picked up his transmission. "You want to know what makes humans special? You've been studying us, analyzing us, trying to understand our irrational behavior. Here's your answer. We don't know how to quit." The Tau commanders. Translation device struggled with the emotion in the human's voice. "Sir, the mathematics remain unchanged. We cannot win." Holt's laugh was like breaking glass. "Cannot win? Son, we've been losing for 10,000 years. Losing is what we do best, right up until we don't." He keyed the Vox again. "Attention all forces. Final stand protocol is now in effect. No retreat, no surrender, no mercy." Sister Aurelia raised her flamer high. "Sisters, show our new allies how servants of the Emperor face extinction." The response came not just from the Sisters of Battle, but from every human throat on the planet. "We are the daughters of the Emperor. We are his wrath made manifest." The sound hit the assembled aliens like a physical force. The Kalith warrior's fur stood on end. The Tau Auxiliary's sensors registered impossible biometric readings from the humans. The Eldar Farsia's psychic sight blazed with visions of golden light and endless fury. "Impossible," breathed Elder Whisperwind. "The psychic resonance, you're channeling collective faith into actual power." From somewhere in the tunnels came the roar of space marine thunder. "For the Emperor! For the Imperium of Man!" The Tyrannid vanguard organism suddenly hesitated. The hive mind had never encountered prey that became more dangerous when cornered, more unified when broken, more determined when facing annihilation. Commissar Holt smiled grimly. Now comes the fun part. He pulled out a device that made the aliens step back in alarm. A simple chrono. In exactly 17 minutes, every nuclear warhead, virus bomb, and plasma reactor on this planet detonates simultaneously. The silence was deafening. You're going to destroy the planet?" stammered Shadowpounce. "Exterminatus protocol," Sister Aurelia explained calmly. "Better a dead world than a corrupted one. Standard Imperial doctrine." The Tau commander's voice rose an octave. "But you'll die too. All of you." "You?" Holt's expression was serene. "Death is nothing. Failure to serve the Emperor is everything." He looked around at the assembled aliens. "Of course, evacuation ships are standing by for non-Imperial forces. We're not monsters." "Aren't you, though?" whispered Farseer Ivrain. "By every definition of sanity, what you're proposing is monstrous." The Commissar considered this. Perhaps, but it's effective monstrosity. He activated his bolt pistol's safety. 14 minutes, 30 seconds. The Caliph Elder made rapid calculations. The evacuation ships can take half our population at most. "Then half your people live," Sister Aurelia said simply. "Better than none, which is what the Tyranids offer." Something unprecedented happened in that moment. The Kroot mercenary leader, a creature evolved from avian carnivores who had never shown loyalty to anything except the highest bidder, stepped forward. "We stay. We fight with humans." The Tau commanders. Battlesuit sensors registered massive energy building in the planet's core. "This is madness." "This is humanity," corrected Commissar Holt. "Bananas, can your device coordinate all remaining forces?" The Jokero chittered and made rapid modifications. Suddenly, every Vox channel on the planet came alive with voices speaking a dozen different languages, all saying the same thing: "For the Emperor." Even the Caliph warriors found themselves roaring their species' ancient war cry. Alongside human battle hymns, the Tau drones began broadcasting Imperial litanies. The Eldar Farseer's lips moved silently along with prayers to a god she had never worshipped. 10 minutes. The Hive Fleet Leviathan scouts recoiled from the planet's surface. Their synaptic links carried confused biodata back to the hive mind. The prey creatures were somehow becoming more dangerous as they approached death. Sister Aurelia's flamer roared to life, painting the tunnel walls with purifying flame. "Sisters, one final hymn for the Emperor." The response shook the mountains. "In death we serve, in life we protect, in faith we conquer." Even species who had never heard Imperial liturgy found themselves shouting along. The very air seemed to thrum with power. 5 minutes. Commissar Holt looked around at the mixed group of warriors. Human fanatics, alien pragmatists, all united in this final moment. "I want you all to understand something. This is not how humanity chooses to end. This is how we choose to begin." The chrono reached 0. For a moment, every living being on the planet felt the same sensation, weightlessness, as if existence itself held its breath. Then the miracle happened. The nuclear fire that should have consumed everything instead formed a perfect sphere around the planet. The Hive Fleet Leviathan, caught in the blast radius, simply ceased to exist. 43 billion organisms reduced to atoms in the span of a heartbeat. Yet the planet remained. Scorched, radiation-soaked, barely habitable but whole. In the stunned silence that followed, Farseer Ivrain spoke in a voice filled with terrible understanding. "The warp, your faith, it actually protected you." "Your Emperor actually answered." Commissar Holt holstered his bolt pistol. "The Emperor protects. We've been telling you that all along." Sister Aurelia removed her helmet, revealing a face that should have been beautiful, but was marked by ritual scarification. "Faith is not weakness, Xenos. Faith is strength beyond measure." The Tau commander's sensors registered impossible readings. "The radiation levels should have killed us all, but we're fine. Better than fine." Bananas chittered excitedly, his modified Voxcaster picking up signals from across the galaxy. Other worlds, other battles, other impossible victories. The Caliph Elder Whisperwind approached Commissar Holt with something like reverence. "Humans, what are you?" Holt considered the question seriously. We are what happens when a species refuses to accept that some things are impossible. We are what emerges when faith becomes stronger than physics. We are the Emperor's gift to a galaxy that has forgotten how to hope. Shadowpounce, his injuries somehow healed by the strange radiation, shook his feline head in amazement. Your species terrifies me more than the Tyranids ever did, but I want to fight beside you again. The Kroot leader, still alive despite all probability, cawed his agreement. We pledge our claws to the Emperor's service. Even the Tau commander, his rigid adherence to the greater good, shaken to its core, bowed formally. Perhaps there are truths beyond the scope of logic. Sister Aurelia smiled, and for the first time it was not the expression of faith or duty, but simple human warmth. Welcome to the Imperium, brothers. As the toxic sun set over their scarred but victorious world, Commissar Holt activated the Vox one final time. His message, carried by Jokairo technology and blessed by whatever powers had chosen to manifest that day, reached every corner of the galaxy. This is the 47th Cadian Shock Troops speaking for all of humanity. To our enemies, we are inevitable. To our allies, we stand together. To the galaxy itself, the Emperor protects, and through his will, humanity endures. The response came not just from humans, but from a dozen species who had witnessed something beyond their understanding. The Emperor protects. In the darkness between stars, other threats stirred and took notice. But that is a story for another day. For now it was enough to know that in a galaxy where there was only war, humanity had found something worth fighting for, and in finding it they had shown others that some things are indeed worth the ultimate sacrifice. The age of isolation was ending. The age of alliance had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, scarred, faithful, and absolutely terrifyingly unstoppable.
Angels fall.